Welcome to the Equity Blueprint Podcast. My name is Dana Wilson, CEO and founder of CHIP, which stands for Changing How Individuals Prosper. And our goal is to help you find financial professionals who can suit your individual needs. I started this podcast to normalize a conversation around money and wealth and what that really means to our communities and just the evolution of our lives. Money isn't always the sexiest topic or fun topic to talk about, but hey, that's why you're here. To not just learn more, but really kick back, relax, and hear other people's journeys and how they've used money, how they related to generational wealth or wealth building to become their own, what I like to call financial architects of their lives. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the dope conversations that you're about to hear with people that inspire me from all across the world. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Equity Blueprint Podcast. Look at me. I got it right this time. Super, super excited. I feel like I should have some hand claps behind me for that. Always excited to bring on our next guest for our episode. Again, I am Dana Wilson, CEO and founder of CHIP. For all of you who are just kicking in and listening to us for the first time, welcome. CHIP stands for Changing How Individuals Prosper. And essentially our goal is to help connect you to financial professionals and really continue to showcase the evolution of money through conversation, which is why this podcast exists. So I'm super excited about our next guest. Jae, welcome to the stage. Welcome to the podcast. I know you've got all sorts of gems to drop, so I am excited to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know how dope you are, but everyone else listening definitely wants to know. So tell everyone a little bit about who you are, what you've been up to, and of course, we'll kick it off from there.
Of course. So, Jae Henderson, my background really has been in building businesses and products for the last, 13, almost 15 years. Started my career in what we called private asset management, AKA I work for an independently wealthy CEO who had a portfolio of different businesses. And I was fortunate enough to span across all those businesses. And as he wanted to open or start a new business, I was right there and I was the first person they tapped. And I built my career that way. And that's really helped me work across a number of different industries. I've actually worked probably in a dozen industries from both that experience and others. And usually bringing new ideas, new businesses to life and replicating that. So I'm super excited to be here. I've done that in CPG, in the distilled spirits industry. So I've kind of seen both sides of the world in many ways.
It's safe to say you've seen everything. I feel like we're gonna have to dig into all of that because you dropped a lot on us, Jae, and I'm just like, all right, where do we start?
Let's dig in.
Let's dig in all the way in. But I love to kick things off with really understanding everyone's money story. Like, what was that first thought around money, how it made you feel, and how even from there it sort of started to evolve for you over time?
Yeah, so I'm originally from South Central Los Angeles. Watts, if anyone's familiar with the Rodney King riots of the early 90s. And my first real understanding of money was that we didn't have it. And I think that was something that was reinforced in my family is like, we don't have it, and my mother was a single mother and worked multiple jobs to try and provide. And I remember early on, I actually there were a lot of elders in our neighborhood, and I would always go to my great grandmother's house, and her neighbors were two elder Black women. And
I know that neighborhood was a whole that I just had a flashback for all of those who are not familiar with 227. And just that neighborhood piece of it. I see them on the porch.
Don't get in trouble. Listen, because the neighbor down the street go tell your auntie, your uncle,
don't do it.
It'll come back, right? and so I would do little tasks and little things for them to get money. And I remember my neighbor, her name was Miss Bugs, actually. And Miss Bugs would have me do little tasks inside of her house, and then she'd have me counting money, literally pennies and nickels. And she'd say, well, how much is this? How much is that? And that was literally the earliest recollection that I can recall of thinking about money. It's like, okay, we don't have money. I have to do things to earn money. And then sitting in Miss Bug's house where she had like literally the piggy bank and spread across the table saying, count this money, right? And if I was able to count it and do things for her, then I was able to take some of it as well. So, I mean, that It's fun. I haven't thought about Miss Bugs in probably a decade, but those are some of my earliest recollections. And I mean, I started entrepreneurship in elementary, literally. So I'm pretty sure it was because of this dynamic that I was raised in as well.
Yeah, and the counting of the coins is interesting too, and bringing it back to that because I had a conversation recently with someone where I was even talking about we're such in a tech and digital age where everything is just done just quick and no one is really touching money. We're not touching
Right.
coins. We're not touching cash. So there's almost this oblivious effect of where money is. But when you actually
Mhm.
see it, touch it, feel it, like I feel like our generation used to do, there's a difference there in understanding that okay, well I have 5 coins and now I don't see anything at all, like they're all gone out of my pocket. Like
Right.
there's a different visual thing that does to you when you're at the corner store and you're like, oh, you don't have a quarter.
That's all I got.
That's all I got.
All I
That's
got.
all I can get is this quarter juice and that's it's gone, and I can't pull out my Apple Wallet and see what else is going
Right.
on in there. But I think that's an interesting core memory that you had.
Yeah, I love that so much actually. So the disconnect that I think that we have right now is absolutely that, right? It's so easy to swipe a card or even easier to pull out your Apple Watch, your iPhone, your whatever device and pay for this thing if you just feel like, "Oh, well, I have money, I have access to money." But when you see the physical money leaving your hand and you're like, "Oh, this is literally all I have." Right?
Mhm.
It definitely, I think it gives you a different appreciation actually for like exchanges and transactions and the value of money, because the exchange of money is like the exchange of energy, right? And so when you're talking about like, oh, I can feel you, I can touch you, like this is real, versus like, oh, it's on my phone. It's like I'm not even thinking about it. I'm pressing a button, Klarna, whatever it's called. Yeah, yeah. Save that for later. I do it later. You know what I mean? So money becomes this abstract thing, as opposed to feeling real. In Miss Bug's kitchen, it was real.
Listen, Miss Bugs was like, I'm gonna set you up right, and I'm going to prepare you
May she rest well. She
exactly.
did.
I'm sure you rest well. No, that's really incredible. So, how do you feel like that experience, especially you talked about, understanding and being an entrepreneur early on in life? And I even remember when I was in elementary school, I used to make all these little like bracelets and stuff and go to school. We would have these days where you would just sell things and crafting and all of that. But how do you feel like that experience, or do you feel like that experience led you to that entrepreneurship and really the understand of how to kind of start to scale and the power of what money can do to help you scale your businesses?
Mm. All right. So I'm going to. This is a deep question for me personally because I think there's multiple. I've had multiple moments, and I think I'm in another moment right now as far as entrepreneurship and scaling.
Mhm.
So I'll say early days, right? So again, where I'm from, it was kind of like you have to get it out of the mud, as some people say now, right? And I think that what that was for me is like I had a hustler's drive and mentality, and I felt like if I didn't help provide in some way, and take ownership or at least of some of what I needed, then I wasn't going to get it, right? And so I noticed again, this was probably third grade. So everyone would leave school and go to what we called the candy house.
Mhm.
And so it was basically a lady who probably bought candy in bulk and then she resold it to children, right? Like after school, whatever. And everybody loved the candy house. And I remember thinking, man, what if like I was able to sell candy but in the school, so basically, I would get the money before you even send it to the candy house, right? And so then I actually convinced my great aunt, to take me to the store. And I don't know if you remember these candies. They were like sour strips or something. They were like these red
Oh yeah, I
strips.
remember those. Those were definitely a part of like the dollar that I had, and I would get like 10 strips.
That's it. That's it. That's exactly what I did. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I did. So I
you are
went.
bringing back some core memories for me here.
Oh, no, seriously. So I went, I was like smart and final, I think is what we called it in LA. So I went to the store and I convinced my aunt, like, if you help me buy this, because I don't have money, I understand I need money to buy it. But if you help me buy this, I'm like, I'm going to take this, I forget however many that comes in the box. I'm going to break it down into like smaller baggies and I'll sell them 10 strips for $1. And then I'll give you your money back. And then you'll help me buy more. And I didn't really I'm a child. I didn't really know this as entrepreneurship. I
Right.
knew it as like hustling and ambition and all these things. But that's how essentially I got to start in entrepreneurship. It's like selling candy on the playground in third or fourth grade until I got in trouble. But
Until they were like, no, shut that
they
down.
were like, wait a minute.
Or the candy lady was like finding out about your enterprise and it was a whole thing. Because
Well,
that's where the real problem comes in,
that
right?
that happened too. So other people started to notice, right? And they'd be like, "Oh, well, I can sell candy," and I was like, "No, no, 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 no. This is my thing."
Like this is my entire enterprise, and
Absolutely.
I can cut you in, but you can't. You
No,
can't
no,
get
no.
your own
Don't
thing.
try to come over here. I sell the sour strips on this block. No, I'm just
Exactly.
kidding.
This is my block. You can do maybe the red and the other colors, but I got
Right.
everything else.
You can sell M&Ms or something. I don't care what else you do.
So once you learn the language, because I feel like that's always true, right? We're always just kind of in this position, especially in a lot of parts of our community, where we're just doing something because of some necessity
Right.
or whatever that gain is, but we don't really have the language around what that is, right? Only because of like access and opportunity and not really knowing, right? So once you found that word of understanding entrepreneurship, what was that transition like for you as
Mm.
as your start to becoming this serial entrepreneur and also pulling like your money journey into that as well?
Yeah, so I basically went from elementary school to I think I was around fifth grade when I started making music, right? And so then I went from that into selling music, right? And so my cousin really taught me on Venice Beach, literally how to talk to strangers, how to sell,
Mhm.
right? In a completely different way. We're talking people who I'd never met from all over the world, and I was trying to convince them to buy the CD, literally. And so back in this day, we had a CD player and some headphones. We'd be like, "Hey, just take a listen, just take a listen." And if people stopped and listened, then I would try to convince them to buy a CD or whatever. And so I started to really understand and learn the language through doing, right? Through practice and through being in these different spaces. And like I said, early days, it was all like a hustle and it was all related to things that I was very familiar with.
Mhm.
And then as I moved on and like I went to UC Berkeley for my undergraduate, then I was exposed to more people and more language and a broader understanding of what entrepreneurship and business ownership and all these other things really meant, right? Because my small scale candy operation.
It was starting to expand. We were
Yeah, right,
expanding. We were building that. That was just like the bottom floor, and now we're getting to the enterprise. So keep
right.
going, keep going.
I had to figure it out. I had to figure it out. Um, and then so then by the time I got into college, I was just like, okay, well, I need to work to make money because I can't afford to be here, to be frank, right? I couldn't afford to be there. But I always had these dreams essentially of just building businesses, of being an entrepreneur, because like those are my core memories, those are my earliest beginnings. And so my first real opportunity to do that was actually once I graduated from college and I had my first job in private asset management. That's when I became a serial entrepreneur. But I was really building businesses for this CEO as he built and scaled his business. So that was really where my career like kind of took off as far as like venture building, business building, and everything related to that. And I loved it. I still love it.
What were the lessons that you feel like you learned even through that time, right? Before you got to the point of working with this massive CEO who was just like, kind of almost teaching you a bit of like the larger scale ropes of things. What were some lessons you learned up until getting to that point?
I think that there are a lot of lessons to be learned, especially coming from struggle, right?
Mhm.
And I don't want to say that in a way that's romanticizing the struggle because I don't think that that's I think we should lessen that a little bit in some ways. But I do think that when your back's against the wall and you like all I have is I can see the money leaving my hand and I have
You like,
earth in my pocket. Like, there's lint in my pocket. Yeah. And I still need to eat and I'm hungry or whatever the thing is. I think that there's a certain level of grit and resilience that you have to develop because it really does feel like you have to make a way or there ain't a way. Like no one's coming to save you. right?
Mhm.
And I that is probably one of the biggest lessons I've always taken with me is to, like, people say stay hungry, right? But like, yeah, like stay hungry, because at some point, like, there's no point in which someone is going to come and save the black man over here. Like
Listen,
they
all of that, all of that, and then some. And I'm gonna just sip my water.
so you have to stay hungry, right?
Yeah.
And also don't burn bridges and relationships as
Mhm.
much as possible, and this is absolutely
Mhm.
necessary, because I do think that sometimes it's necessary. um like you can stand firm, stay your ground, maintain your integrity, all those things, but I do think that relationships have taken me very, very far as well. Even when I had to, like, uh, ask my ego to chill out, right?
Mhm.
Like, check my own ego. Um, and I think that all those things have been lessons up until that point. Until I actually started at Bentley. Bentley Enterprise is the name of the organization I was with at that time. So until I started at Bentley, that those are all learning lessons.
Yeah. So what is it? So I like what you said about like that social capital, because I feel like a lot of times we don't equate that to wealth as well. Like that's why how a lot of people gain their wealth. It's not so much about smarts, which we know and are visually able to see
Right.
that in a lot of current situations. It's more so about who we know, who we're connected to, and how we're building on that social capital to move us forward. And when you were in that position, especially next in your career where you're working with this gentleman, you're building out and really watching businesses, how did you go into that next business that you were thinking about, and even
Ooh.
leverage some of the social capital that you might have had in that moment to continue to propel.
So I'll just say I'm still learning.
Mm.
I'm still learning how to actually leverage the social capital that I've built up in over the, again, almost 15 years of my career. But I would say that early on, especially when I started in that particular business, I was very, very fortunate. The person who really looked at my resume and said, where other people said, this guy has no focus, like he's
Mhm.
all over the place. He has such a very wide background and varied interest. And I mean, I was an American Studies major at UC Berkeley, which, if folks don't know what that means, is basically interdisciplinary studies where you make up a major, but it has to be focused on America, and then you justify your degree through a thesis. And the major that I made up was essentially around business. No surprise there. Business, African American studies, and performance studies, and I brought all that together to put forth my thesis, and that's actually carried me pretty far into my career as well. And so he saw something in me and said, "This person's interesting. He can do anything." Where other people say he doesn't fit a mold. Like, is he an accountant? Is he a project manager? Is he? He's just like, he can do anything. And so by him bringing me in, I aligned really closely with him. He was the director of IT when I interviewed. Then he became the director of ops. Then he became the COO. And my career grew with him, and my responsibilities grew with him. And so by aligning myself with the right person in the organization, who, again, really believed in me, had faith in me, corrected me, was critical of me in all the right ways, constructive criticism, everything. He poured so much into me. And I think that that helped me then build social capital across all the enterprises, because he really led by example. And I mean, to this day, he was actually in my wedding. He was my ring bearer in my wedding. Like, to this day, this man is like, it's like my brother from another. And he was also a great mentor to me. So when it comes to building social capital, I really think about, I looked at him as an example, and then of course I mirrored some things and I adjusted some other things that fit me. Um, and then I just, because I worked across all the businesses, I made sure that people knew I existed, but that I was there to be helpful, to add value, right? Because I think that that's the greatest strength of entrepreneurs. Like, we are the value creators, we're the value adders, right, of this world. And I think that's the other aspect. And sorry, I'm probably going way off your script, but I think that's the other
We don't
aspect.
have a script here. We just listen. We just talk and we have good conversations. So you're
Right.
good.
I'm
You're
like, you
good.
probably got a
If
plan.
anything, like you're making my brain spin in a very good way, and I'm sure other people as well, as we're really digging into things that we may not think about and often we don't talk about. Right? That's the whole thing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And but so that's the thing, right? So for me, entrepreneurs are the people who are the creators of this world, right? Regardless of your discipline or your focus, entrepreneurs can change the world in ways that politicians can't, in ways that, that no one else can. We can reimagine the world. And that's such a amazing power that I didn't want to align myself necessarily with like the traditional power structures that people align themselves with, even though I did do a stint on Capitol Hill for the late Congressman John Lewis, and that was an amazing experience.
I can imagine. Wow. Yeah.
It was an amazing experience, and to this day, it's changed my life. But I also recognized through that experience, I'm like, well, this is great, but y'all move a little too slow for me. And and so I really think that entrepreneurship and ownership and all these things, like I'm just in love with it. You could probably tell I'm in love with it.
Oh
Like
yeah. No, but
don't
it's a
tell my wife
very
that she's my second. She's
yeah.
my
It's
second wife.
listen. It's a very real thing, right? When we're yoked to do certain things in this world and we really start to lean into our genius and what we really start to discover what that is and how we love it and the deeper we get into it, especially if you are an entrepreneur and you're someone who just gets up and do. Like, I think if anything anyone can say about me, I'm a very action oriented person. You tell me something, like I'm the worst person to tell a goal to, because I'm going to remind you, ask you
You
about
gonna
it.
text? You gonna be texting?
I'm gonna just be like, look, not only did you do it, but like, here's all the things that you could do to get it done, because I have just been activated. It's just like, don't push that go button in me, because it's just on, right? And there's it's kind of hard to like turn it off and dust it off until you say like, okay, no, I'm done, go away.
Like, please stop.
Please stop. And then I'm like, all right, cool, well, whatever. And then I'm like reactivated towards all the other things. But there is that beauty
That's amazing.
in that, creativeness and that, understanding, especially as you're talking about the difference in that political landscape where things take time. People have to talk, even in corporate America, people have to talk and ask questions in meetings and all the things. And then the beauty of entrepreneurship, especially at those early stages, is that ability to build and to pivot and to do things quickly and to test. And when something's not working, it's just like, okay, well, let's go over here and see what this look like. But I also want to bring it back to something that you said around ownership, right? A lot of us get into these businesses because ownership is really important to us, especially, and I would say a lot of our communities where we don't own a lot of things and we've been kind of subject to the side place of just being consumers and watching other people build things and then being a part of that in some way, as opposed to being always being able to be on the ground floor of things. I feel like we're just now getting to be on the ground floor of a lot of stuff. And essentially it's because more of us are here and we're building and we're becoming those creators and we're collaborating with each other, kind of going back to that social capital. But so what does ownership really mean to you? What did it mean to you then? And what does it mean to you now, especially even as ownership allows you to even navigate your own wealth journey to a
Yeah,
certain
100. So I will say this also falls into the category of lessons. And where I am pivoting, like not like right now and in the future. And so although I had done all these things and built businesses, with other folks and for other folks, I didn't have any equity. I didn't have any ownership, right? So I owned the outcomes, but I didn't actually own the means of production. I didn't own the land. I didn't own the business, right? And so I was an employee. And what that made me realize is like there's nothing wrong. First of all, let me just say this out loud. There's nothing wrong with choosing to be an employee.
Oh no, we are
Ever.
not all wired differently. And some
No.
days I'm just like, I just need to wake up and be just
Right.
not what I am
Let me
right
just go push some buttons and
now.
just like get my check and do my thing.
Exactly.
Right.
We are all meant to be on certain paths.
There's nothing wrong with it. No, for real. There's nothing wrong with it. But I realized that I wanted something more, right? I wanted to not just own the outcomes. I didn't just want to own the results. I wanted to own like the profits from the results. I wanted to own the upside, right? Kendrick Lamar, I love Kendrick, first of all. Also, like, shout out to my fellow Gemini brother. He from Compton, I'm from Watts, so we basically neighbors.
Same Gemini, so we're all in good company right here.
Oh,
This is
oh,
an amazing podcast. Yes,
oh, what? Are you May or June?
I'm May, so I'm end of May.
I'm 28.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm May 28.
No, you're not. I'm May 28th.
Hey,
Look
that
at
is
this.
crazy.
What's up, podcast? Happy birthday to us. I feel like I should turn on like a birthday song of mine.
Right. We need a button or something.
I know I need to do better with some buttons. I really got to upgrade the whole podcast.
This is also why we hit it off just so immediately.
So this makes sense. I didn't even realize that when we first talked that we should.
No, I didn't.
That's so dope.
We didn't bring this up. I mean, it's not something you usually open. Well, we don't. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, open up
like now I'm going to walk
what's
around with people and be like, so when's your birthday? Like, is it May? Is it May 28th? No. Okay. Well, bye.
Well, yeah. Sorry, because I interviewed this one guy. His birthday was my birthday, literally. But
right.
So Kendrick has this quote of, "I want the credit if I'm losing or I'm winning on my mama. That's the realest," right? And that's how I feel about ownership, right? I want the credit if I'm losing or I'm winning, and I don't just want the credit in a paycheck. Like if I make a great business decision and I can employ a bunch of people or I can do a bunch of other things, give me the credit. And if I I shoot for the moon and I actually fall on my face, I take the credit for that too, right? Because I think that there's some of us are just wired differently, and you mentioned this earlier. Some of us are wired differently when it comes to ownership, right? And that's what ownership really is. Ownership is, in my opinion, taking the responsibility of not just the outcomes, but the asset and everything that comes with that. And it's not for everyone. Like I'm fortunate to own the house that we are currently in. This is the second home that I've owned. I'm looking at expanding our real estate portfolio. This was a house hack. So it was a very intentional type of ownership for us. And we're able to run 3 businesses out of it, right? So then it's not just owning the asset, it's making sure that the asset actually works for whatever your goals are. And this was all like, I'm still learning and developing in all of this, right? And it's because early on I recognized that when I was at that enterprise, they owned everything. They owned the means of production. They had a cattle ranch down the street, and that cattle ranch also grew all the grain for the distillery that we built that was down the street, a couple miles away. When the distillery then had the byproducts, the leftover grains, it went back to the cattle ranch. And all of these different business entities basically created a vertically integrated, like circular system that was owned by one person. One person owned all of this, right? And I didn't think of this until, several jobs later. I'm like, that's wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's job creation, that's value creation in a whole different scale and way. And so it actually reframed my thinking about ownership and the value of ownership. And it also made me recognize, this is going again down a tangent a little bit, but my great grandfather was a sharecropper, right? He didn't own anything, right? He worked the land with promises and things like that, but he didn't own anything. And at the end of the day, he died poor. And his daughter died homeless. And her daughter was my mother, right? And I think that it's different when you have that level of instability and insecurity. And to me, I tied it back to ownership. We didn't own the means of production, right? If he owned that farm, it would have been a whole different story, right? If he owned that house, it would be a whole different story. We would have had more flexibility, more opportunity to do different things, pull different levers, move in different ways. And so now I'm like all in. I'm like, if I can't own it, I don't want it.
Listen, that is really like the staple, the end, the like tie-in sentence. If I can't own it, I don't want it. But I think there's a beautiful marriage there too, right? Because I feel like in a lot of our communities, when we see someone who is, maybe they have a business that is an event business, and then on the side they're doing some jewelry making, or on the other side they're doing something else. And it's just like, oh, this person is doing too much. But it's like, if you see, and this is what we say, they're like, oh, they're confused. And so it's, it almost makes me think of Was it the it was the best man. I think the first one when he's dating Sanaz Lathan's character, and they're always making jokes about, you know, how she was a cook one time and then she was doing this and then she was doing this and then eventually throughout the series she found her footing and all, you know, and everything just kind of came together. But it's always like, oh, this person seems like they don't know what they're doing, but in the back end there's an entire strategy going on
Yeah.
that you just aren't aware of and you aren't piecing together, where all these different businesses that look separate and don't seem like they make sense, when you start looking at the bigger picture, it's like, oh, this feeds that, and this is also owned by that same person. And oh, now I see why they stepped out and did this, because it all ties into everything else and they are the center of that entire wheel. And we also have to kind of start getting out of our way and looking at people and saying, oh man, she's doing too much, right? It's just like, no, she's not. Like, look, it all makes sense. It's just the difference in thought and the way we start to kind of, the way that we've been able to have access to understand all of that when we're out and we see other people doing it. It was just like, oh yeah, that's so dope. Go do the thing. And then we see sister down the street and be like, nah, sis, why are you doing all that?
What you got going on? Like,
what you got going?
Land on something. Why can't you just be an accountant or this or that? Why can't I perfectly fit you into the thing that's in my head?
Right.
Like, why can't I perfectly just place you in the thing that's in my head and say, this is what this person does, period?
Yes.
Right. But
this is the one way for you to develop and sustain it. And
that's wild.
Like, no, sis on the side has employed like 5,500 people and you just didn't even notice all of that.
I have to know
the business that you work for. So how about that? She pay a check, right?
Speak on it, right? So I have to go back and see the exact number, but I think at some point I read that the majority of the wealthiest folks have at least 7 different streams of income. Mm-hmm. And when I think back again to my early beginnings in that private asset management company, I'm like, yo, bro, he had, you know, and I was thinking, I'm like, yeah, because and each of them fed into something else. I'm like, so why aren't we actually thinking like the sister who's down the street? Because guess what? If you put all your eggs in one basket, which is also another colloquial, like that's another saying.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Meanwhile, you're criticizing someone who's doing 3 or 4 things. Why? Maybe you putting all your eggs in one basket. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that, especially right now. Maybe she's actually the diversification of her businesses is probably what's going to keep her afloat. And I'll tell you, 100%, that's what's kept us afloat in our business, right? So outside of my day job, I also run a consulting business where we really work with SMB, small to medium-sized businesses, really thinking about their technology and product and like basically like how do we continue to create value and scale these different businesses, right? In a way that's also sustainable for them. And then we have a supper club. And the supper club brings like world-class chefs in small, intimate settings. Like
I'm sorry. What time is this supper club? Listen,
we sold out until November. But
listen, excuse the podcast. This is intermission. We're gonna have some side conversations because I didn't know we had the same birthday. I didn't know about your supper club, which I feel some type of way about because
I can tell.
World-class chefs. All I heard was world-class chefs, and I'm a big foodie. And I'm just like, listen, okay,
they're incredible, like and incredible humans as well, like incredible humans who are dope chef, like top of their craft. We have a cocktail experience where we partner with a woman who was on Netflix Drink Master. She was also named U.S. Bartender of the Year. Dope human being, and so people may look at those things and say, Jay, you doing too damn much, and you run a data platform, like you're head of product for a data platform. Also, they recognize I don't sleep, which is fine. But and then we have our Airbnb.
Small details.
Then we have our Airbnb, and then we have a long-term rental because I told you we house hack. And so the way that I think of all of these things is like, how do they all work together? Well, when it's slow times for the cocktail experience, I still have 3 other lines of business that are still bringing in revenue, right? Not to mention my actual W-2 employment. Right. And then if I want to ramp down or ramp up or do different things, use different levers if we need to increase revenue or whatever the case is, then I'll say, okay, like we need to do a marketing campaign for this. We need to do some influencer work on this. We need to like reduce the price for the Airbnb. Right. That means that I have options, though. I'm like, I think that the the beautiful thing about the entrepreneurial journey beyond solving problems is the ability for you to have options. Because if one thing doesn't work out, you don't have all your eggs in one basket. So it's like, well, that's how I think of it. So now I'm thinking about how can I like 10x what I'm doing right now, right? Because Jay only has 24 hours in a day, unfortunately. I wish there were multiple of me and I could, well, the world doesn't want that, but I sometimes do.
Like, listen, I'm like, likewise. I'm like, sometimes I'm like a clone and I'm like, nah, I think
No, that's dangerous. That's
that's,
dangerous. Don't clone
that's
a Gemini.
dangerous. Too many Geminis running around here.
We already kind of wild. Like, we
Yeah.
already kind of wild. No.
Like, yeah, everyone is like, no.
Yeah.
Everyone who's listening was just like, hell no.
Right. They're like, wait a minute. It's two. First of all, it's two Geminis on the podcast.
Exactly. Everyone, as soon as we said that, they all turned off. They're like, nah, I'm good. So whoever is left listening, I appreciate you, and please hang on. We're we gonna.
No, it's good. It's good. But that's what I think about now, right? In terms of entrepreneurship and ownership and scaling. I'm like, if you really want options, then you want ownership. Mm-hmm. And yes, that comes with more in maintenance sometimes. It comes with more in like paperwork sometimes. But what's paperwork and maintenance for the rest of your life or for your future or for your longevity or for your kids' longevity or for everyone talks about generational wealth or for generational wealth, right? Like what's some paperwork and maintenance? So yeah, I mean I love
it. So how does that look like for you and your wife as you're looking at all your businesses? And you talk about, wealth and generational wealth and legacy that both of you want to continue to leave. How do you have those conversations around wealth and legacy?
Whew. So I will say, my wife and I have known each other for 16 years. We've been friends for 16 years. We were dating for I think 7, and now we've been married for 3. And some of the early questions that we had to one another when we were at this turning point between friends and maybe something more was like, what's your relationship with money?
Like, I love that.
What are your relationships with like your family? Like, what do you want out of life? Do you want kids? Do you not want kids? And so we had those really deep, sometimes intense conversations very, very early on, because I wanted to understand who she was beyond the surface, like to make sure that our goals were compatible. So you can't see it right here, but me and my wife have finance retreat twice a year where we go off, not at our house. And for that whole weekend, we enjoy and we sit for hours talking about our finances. Where are we? Like, here's the goals that we set for this year. How are we tracking? We have a monthly, what we call money date, because you got to make it sexy. You got to make it fun.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
you got to keep the conversations fun and all the things.
But also, like, at some point, she was in her MBA and W-2 income. And like, those dates were hard, right? Because we were paying for that MBA. And so, but those things, in those early conversations and that maintenance, again, have really helped us talk about and hone in what wealth looks like for us, what like living a good life looks like for us. What if we got all the money in the world tomorrow, what will we do with it? Right? Like, we have plans for that. I know she wants to start a school at some point. If we had the money, I'm like, girl, go start your school. Do your thing. Because you come from the background. I know as an operator, she can do it. And so we're moving in very specific ways because we recognize that we aren't going to have anybody to save us, and neither is anyone in our family, right? And that's a blessing sometimes, because it means that you ain't gonna sit there waiting on Superman. You have to make some things happen. You are your Superman. You are your super person. And so when we talk about wealth and longevity and all these things, it's about, like, we don't plan to have children, but we do plan to give back to our friends, our family, our communities that we care so much about. And what is wealth besides living a good life, right? And making sure that other people can live a good life as well.
All of that, because I feel like wealth sometimes, especially in a lot of our communities, it's always tied to money. And it's like, yes, everyone wants to have money, be able to, have a lot of money, do whatever it is they want to do. But you can have all the money in the world and everything is falling apart over here. Your family's not well and
Facts.
someone's not doing this. And it's like,
They
how
don't
much,
even like you.
right? Don't
They
even like
don't
you.
like
Don't even
you.
like you at home with all your money by yourself. Like, what does that mean? Right. So it's like,
Right.
wealth is, I feel like, becoming so much more expanded to happiness, to helping my community, to what do I want to give back. And it doesn't mean that, oh, I don't want to make money or have sustainability or have growth and have all this wealth. It's just that the definition of it has changed from
Right.
this a specific number or value on an income that I'm making, and it's more about what type of, like, what is my joy, right?
Right.
We
Right.
don't talk a lot about how,
Money's a tool.
yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool to do something, but we just
Yeah.
got so trapped into this, like, this is my identity, and this is
No.
what it has
Money's
to
a
be,
tool.
right? Yeah.
I think it happened recently where Bill Gates announced that he's basically shutting down the Gates Foundation in 20 years. He's gonna deploy the 200 billion or whatever it is, and like he's like, I'm done, right? And I think about that. I think of it as such a beautiful act in many ways, but I'm like, money is a tool. So wealth, the definition of wealth has to be expanded, right? Because wealth isn't necessarily, assets and debt
Yep.
equals net worth, right? It's actually like health is wealth. Because what does it matter if you have millions or billions of dollars and you are decrepit and you can't do anything with it,
Hmm.
right? You can't enjoy life. So I think that's also the balance for me, right? It's not just about stacking money. It's about deploying it in ways that are meaningful, joyful, so that my wife, my family, that we can live fulfilling lives because this life is a lot shorter. Not to end on not to be morbid about it, but like this life is a lot shorter than I think we sometimes realize. And it's like, well, money is a tool then, right? Just like anything else, like technology is a tool. Money is a tool to get things done and the things that you care about. So if you want to be happy, you want to be healthy, I have a garden in my backyard. Like
Listen, you gotta grow them vegetables.
that's also saving me money.
No, no, no. Let me stop. You better start that farmer's market.
I'm actually thinking about trying to figure out how to start a chain of farms. Like forget the farmers market. Like I want to own the farms, and I want to make sure that we can understand the means of production,
Mhm.
and that we have control of the means of production. I think that that's very important, especially right now,
Yes,
and
yes.
for the future. So anyway, what we put in our bodies is also a part of wealth. That's
Yep.
a wealth story.
Oh
It's how
yeah.
we nurture ourselves.
Yeah, it's all about, going back to that mindset about what we value and how we value it. How do you value your mind, body, spirit? And then ultimately, the things that help you do all of that, right? I know a lot of people always have comments around LeBron James and the amount of money he spends on his body. I feel like it just came up recently. Yeah, for some reason I feel like I just saw it recently because we know he spends upwards of like millions of dollars. But then you also have to look at that compared to what he makes, right? And it's really just
Exactly.
like a drop in a bucket. The comparison, it almost looks like really apples to oranges in that way.
Well,
But
you
it's
also
also,
have to look at the fact that his body is his
yeah,
greatest instrument, right?
exactly.
That's his tool.
Exactly. It's a tool to do all the other things that make him happy and bring him joy.
Right.
So it's like even thinking about how we do that, our own selves, right? How we're thinking about ourselves, how we equate our relationship to all of that. So do you feel like now at this point in your life, the money conversations that you have, just in general, and even those that you have as a family, have gotten easier to just kind of unpack now that you all have gotten into this practice, like you have these
They're
meetings
just different.
and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're just different, right? So, you know, it's just taking it way back, but I'll try and be quick because I recognize your viewers are probably like, this man just rambles. But like in
I don't think so.
2020,
I'll ask for feedback and ask everyone else.
okay, I
No,
appreciate that. You
you're
can be
good.
like, next time, Jay needs to be quiet. But so in 2020, in February 2020, my wife and I moved in together. Now wife, she was then girlfriend. We had just moved in together for the first time in 2020 February. I had just left my long-term job in January, and I was burned out in sabbatical. She unexpectedly left her job in February. As like we moved in, we got locked down together in March. So the conversations we were having about money then when we're both sitting in this apartment that we just signed a lease for, unemployed, both of us, very different, right? And so eventually I went into consulting. That's when I started with Y Consulting. And so we started to have some income coming into the household, but those conversations, and then we moved from California to DC. So money conversations changed again,
Mhm.
right? Because we moved across the country, we depleted the savings that was there. She didn't know it, but I was just about to propose to her. I proposed to her, so I spent more money from my savings on the ring and the things and like all this. And so those conversations were different about money as well. It's like, what are we going to do? Are we going to like get this job? Are we going to do this? Whatever. Like, what moves are we making? Then we got married. She started her MBA 3 months before we got married, before our wedding, right? So we had a conversation about money, of how we were going to finance that MBA, because we knew that we couldn't afford the loans, and like there's a whole situation around that. And I'm like, okay, well, if we use your whole check, so then she started working at W-2. We're like, we use your whole check, we can pay for the MBA, but we have to cut expenses. We need to do this, this, and this. And we were very, we were regimented, right? Like, all right, we can't eat out this many times. We have to do this and this. And she like, you gonna eat sheet meals, basically put everything in one sheet pan and like throw it in the oven, like that's your meal. As
Mhm.
a food, it breaks my heart. Anyway, we have to figure it out, right? And then we transitioned to a place where we were both working full time. We ended up buying a house. Again, I mentioned the house hack. So we bought the house with the intention of house hacking. That produced two additional revenue streams, right, in one house. And then from there, we started our other businesses, lines of business, the cocktail experience, and then eventually the supper club. And so then conversations about money are different. And now we're talking about, okay, well, we're talking about taxes, first of all.
Mhm.
Like we
Yeah,
need a
that's
good,
a whole
we need a
nother
good
thing.
yeah, we need a good bookkeeper. And then we're talking about how do we utilize and deploy the money that we have saved for the next things, right? So the conversations just become different, and life happens. And not everything you plan, of course, as you and everybody else know, not everything you plan and you put on paper come to fruition, and there are lots of twists and turns in between. But I think the conversations now are a very, very different outlook on money, especially if I go all the way back in the story to, elementary school me, who was just out here hustling, selling candy. So to think now that I'm like, oh, we could build like a mini empire, and I don't have all the capital and all the pieces yet, but I can see it,
Yeah.
right? And that seeing and that believing and that ambition and that still back against the wall mentality that I had from growing up. I'm like, we gonna get it. And I'm fortunate that my wife is from Oakland, so she wild too, um, and she about it. So anyways, it's a long way of answering your question, but the conversations are just different.
Yeah, and they seem more like, from what you said then, from that hustle to now, into like full on intention, and also there's a developed strategy. Well, a developed and undeveloped strategy around it, right? It's like the intention behind the strategy of what you see, but then it's also about the part that you still figure out along the journey, which is what
Right.
you do, right? That allows you to give room for that grace, that pivot, that okay, well, we did this, but this doesn't seem to make sense anymore, and let's do this next thing, which I love. And there's like so many things that you talked about, but I feel like we didn't even unpack like the house hacking and all these different things. So I'm not sure what everyone else is thinking as they're listening, and I don't really care. But we're gonna have to have you back for a part two, because we need to unpack all these gems of stuff that you're dropping, that
Let's
you
do it.
have done and that you all have been able to pull together just from the wheel and enterprise that you all are building, which is amazing, right? And I think it's the thing that a lot of us want to get to, right? It's just about, not just about ownership, but how do we really see ourselves with that large level Bill Gates mentality, where we see the full world, and how we just insert ourselves around
Right.
all the things that we can do that make us happy and still bring us money and wealth, and all the things. But before we hop, since I know you've run a bunch of businesses, you see a lot of data and metrics in your day-to-day role as well, what are a few things that you think businesses, especially within this time that we're in, can maybe either do differently or try to pivot or think more about, as we're trying to like navigate this entire
Mm.
whatever is
So
whatever we're in right
First
now.
of all, we all live in the same,
The same.
reality or whatever this thing is. I don't know what this is right now, but um, I think that right now, and this is what I've been saying to people recently, is like we really need to go back to the basics of value creation. I think that gone are the days that you can throw up some BS and people just go and buy it because they got it. They have a disposable income and it look cool on Instagram or whatever the case is. I think that buyers are becoming more discerning. I think that people we've seen it actually across multiple different news outlets as well. Like people aren't like restaurants are getting less foot traffic. There's other things that are happening, and I would just say for our businesses, I mentioned it earlier, but the Supper Club is sold out, right? And it's not a small price tag, right? It's not an exorbitant price tag. It's not a small price tag. And so what that means to me, or what that signals to me, is that people are opting for experiences that solve a very particular need in this moment, and they're willing to still pay for it. Granted, you know your target audience, you understand your target market, you're in the right place with the right offering. Again, I'm from product, right? So I really believe that you have to be solving a problem in some way and delivering a solution that people actually want to pay for. But I think that that's a big thing for people, right? So really think about how you're creating value, and of course, you always have to control the cost side of running a business, of starting a business, as much as possible. And so that's the other thing that I'm thinking of right now. It's like, how can I help support other entrepreneurs who are building, especially at the early stages, because I recognize costs eat into a lot of the profit.
Talk about it. Talk that talk. Talk that talk.
So I'm like, man, I mean, I've been doing this for a minute, and I see the writing on the wall. I experienced it. So like, keep your costs down, keep them regulated as much as possible, tighten up your offerings, get closer to the people who are actually your customers, not your auntie and your uncle and your brother and the whatever for your small business. Get close to the people who are your actual customers. Figure out what they actually need from you and deliver consistently at a high quality, so that the little money that they spend in their budget that's discretionary, they're going to give it to you. And that's what I'm thinking about. And that's what I'm thinking about for our businesses.
Dope. I love that. Be intentional, be focused, double down on your customer. Jay, again, thank you. You are dropping all sorts of gems. And again, we are absolutely going to have you back for a part 2. So I'm like taking notes on all the things. They're gonna be sick of us. And like, damn it, here come those damn Geminis again. They are so annoying and they talk way too much.
We should do a birthday edition. Like,
listen, we might have to hop on and do a bonus birthday edition. I'm gonna hold you to that. I'm supposed to be taking some time off, but we'll figure it out.
All right, we'll figure it out. I'm supposed to be taking time off the same week, so we off. Leave us alone.
Yes, absolutely. We gonna come back and you're gonna be like, what are y'all talking about? But no, thanks again and happy early birthday to you.
Happy birthday
Thank you. I appreciate it. And for all those who are listening, thanks for hanging in there with us. Hope you enjoyed the conversation and definitely continue to check out more episodes of the Equity Blueprint podcast. See you all soon. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you share and subscribe. Tell a friend to check it out as well. See you again soon.